As he was dying on the cross, Jesus looked to his mother and to the disciple whom he loved. And he said to Mary, "Woman, here is your son." And then to John, "Here is your mother." We are told that from that hour, the disciple took her into his own home. This text supports an ancient tradition that the Apostle John would have taken Mary with him when he traveled to Ephesus in Asia Minor, and that both ended their days in that city. Indeed, on the top of a high hill overlooking the Aegean Sea, just outside of Ephesus, there's a modest dwelling that tradition holds to be the House of Mary. I'm standing in the ruins of the ancient cathedral church at Ephesus. A council took place here in the year 431. At issue was the articulation of the nature and person of Jesus. Go back to that question that Jesus himself posed at Banias. Who do people say that I am? That question haunted the mind of the early church, and the greatest intellects of the time strove mightily to answer it. Progress was made at the Council of Nicaea in 325, then the Council of Constantinople in 381. But in the 420s, a new controversy arose, due to the teaching of Nestorius, who was the Bishop of Constantinople. He was very influenced by the Antioch school, which placed a great stress on the humanity of Jesus. He said that in Christ, two persons come together, divine and human, in a sort of intense moral union. This meant that Mary, who was responsible for the human element in Jesus, could be called Christotokos, bearer of Christ, but not Theotokos, not mother of God. In fact, Nestorius thought it was the height of blasphemy to say that God has a mother. Well, Cyril, who was the Bishop of Alexandria, took issue with this, and he thought that Nestorius was a heretic. And he called for the council that met here in the summer of 431. After much deliberation, the council fathers determined that Jesus ought not to be thought of simply as a human person with an intense relationship to the person of God. For that would make him a sort of supreme saint, but not the incarnate Son of God. In his unique person, divinity and humanity come together. And this means, the Council Fathers concluded, Nestorius was wrong to deny of Mary her title Theotokos. Because if Jesus truly is divine, and Mary's the mother of Jesus, she ought to be called the Mother of God. When this formal declaration was made, the common people of Ephesus celebrated that night with a torch-lit parade. This is a very good example of the general principle that whatever we say about Mary is meant not so much to draw attention to her as to Christ. To say that Mary is the Mother of God is to defend that densely textured claim that Jesus truly is divine, that in him God became one of us. Fulton J. Sheen said that Mary's like the moon. Hers is always a reflected light coming from a greater source. The Mass, the liturgy, is a kind of Noah's Ark. It's a place where a microcosm of God's good order is preserved in the midst of a sinful world. But more than all this, the Mass is our participation in and anticipation of the great heavenly liturgy, the right praise given to God by the saints and the angels. For these reasons and others besides, Vatican II referred to the liturgy as the source and the summit of the Christian life. When the homily is complete, the people stand for the recitation of the Creed. They can use the ancient and simple formula called the Apostles' Creed, but customarily they pray the great statement of faith, which emerged from the Council of Nicaea in 325. In reciting these lyrical lines from the Creed, God from God, light from light, true God from true God, begotten, not made, consubstantial with the Father. The church rehearses its victory in a very ancient struggle, the struggle against Arius. Arius was a 4th century priest of the Church of Alexandria who had denied the full divinity of Jesus. Consubstantial, one in being. Those are English renderings of the Greek word homoousios, a technical term used at Nicaea to express the fact that Jesus shares fully in the divinity of the Father. What they sensed at Nicaea was that this was a standing or falling point for Christianity. If the divinity of Jesus is denied, Christianity devolves in short order into one more mythology or moral system. What I find so moving is that 1,700 years later, Sunday after Sunday, the church rises to declare once again the victory over Arius. There's something properly subversive about the opening declaration of the Creed, I believe in one God, since it precludes any other pretender to ultimacy, be it country, culture, political party, or charismatic leader. Hence, those who state their faith in the one God are standing resolutely athwart all forms of idolatry, both ancient and contemporary. The whole point is this: the church is not simply a human institution. The church is, as Vatican II said, a sacrament of Jesus. That means it shares in the very being, life, and energy of Christ. Or in that inexhaustibly rich metaphor of St. Paul, the church is the body of Jesus. Not just an institution, not an organization, not a collectivity of like-minded people. The church is an organism made up of interdependent cells and molecules and organs. Think of those wonderful organic images that Jesus uses all the time. I am the vine and you are the branches. Remain in me, live in me. Eat my body and drink my blood. Now, I could be a great admirer of Abraham Lincoln. I could even join the Abraham Lincoln Society. I'd never be tempted for a minute to eat the body and drink the blood of Lincoln. I could admire Gandhi. I could join the Gandhi Society. I'd never be tempted to be grafted onto Gandhi. But we say just those radical things about our relationship to Jesus. Two great biblical images come to mind here. One is from the 25th chapter of Matthew's Gospel. Jesus says, "Whatsoever you do to the least of my people, you do to me." He's not simply saying, when you feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, you're doing something ethically praiseworthy. He's saying you're doing something for me. He's not simply saying when you fail to do those things, you're doing something ethically blameworthy. He's saying you fail to do something to me. That's how intimate the connection is between Christ and his mystical body, the church. Or in the Acts of the Apostles, when we hear about the conversion of Saul. Saul hears the voice. Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Saul was going to persecute the church of Jesus, the disciples, the followers of Jesus. But Jesus didn't say that. He said, why are you persecuting me? Again, how close the identification between Christ and his mystical body. I'm standing here in the great church of San Clemente in Rome. Behind me is a 12th century mosaic. I think it's the most beautiful depiction of what I'm talking about, this mystical, organic quality of the church. See the cross of Christ? On it are the 12 doves, symbolic of the 12 apostles who will go out with the message of Christ to all the world. But then look, growing from the cross, swirling around the cross, all those vines and branches and leaves, all that life, that's the organism of the mystical body of Jesus. That's all the people joined to Christ across the ages. And if I can press that natural metaphor, the church is meant to gather not just the people of the world. It's meant in some mystical way to gather all of creation, all of nature around the energy of Christ. St. Joan of Arc at her trial was being interrogated, and she said this: about Jesus Christ and the church, I know this: they are simply one thing, and we shouldn't complicate the matter. The church is not a club, it's an organism. So all of us who are baptized are connected to each other like cells in a body. And so if we're the mystical body, then when someone's getting kicked around, that hurts me, that affects me. I can't say that's your problem. It has to be our problem. The Eucharist is the mystical body. The Eucharist is the sacrament of the mystical body. Therefore, receiving the Eucharist makes you more attuned to these disruptions of justice.
Not just symbolically.
Well,
when you receive the Eucharist.
No, the Eucharist is the real presence of Jesus. So and that's why when you eat and drink the body and blood of Christ, you're becoming conformed to his body and blood. I mean, you're becoming more integrated into the mystical body. And therefore, Eucharist should give you a heightened sense of justice. And that's what you see in Dorothy Day very clearly. She spent a lot of time in front of the Blessed Sacrament, a lot of time at Mass, a lot of time at benedictions and retreats, and then her life was this radical commitment to the poor and to nonviolence and to ending war and all that. It's perfectly congruent. The more time you spend with the Eucharist, the more time you're going to be devoted to justice.
I don't think most realize that or think of that when they go up to communion.
No, probably not. And that's a tragedy, but I agree with Godfrey Diekman, who is actually a figure at Vatican II. He's an American Benedictine. He said the thing we lost sight of after the council was the idea of the mystical body. And prior to the council, lots of the leading theologians had a lot to say about it. And that's why from the Mass comes social justice. Social justice returns to the Mass. Those two are always linked.